I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling a story like this, but here we are. My name's Mike, and I've been with Lisa for about 7 years. We met in college, hit it off pretty quick, and eventually got married. She's always been a little bitchy, but I figured that was just her personality, sharp, quick with a joke, kind of a firecracker. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Things started to feel off a few months ago. She'd be strangely distant, cancel plans at the last minute, or get unusually defensive when I asked where she'd been. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Work was hectic. I was busy with the startup I was trying to fund, and she's always had an eye for drama. But then I noticed her phone was more guarded than ever, and she'd leave the room every time she got a message. I didn't want to be that guy who snooped, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One night, I was working late on some slides for an investor pitch, and I decided to check the security footage of our building. Just a quick glance, nothing serious. Our incubator space has cameras that record everything, and I'd always wondered what Lisa was up to when she was on her own there. Normally, I'd just see her walking in and out, but that night something caught my eye. It wasn't just her coming and going, it was her sneaking into a back corridor I'd never seen her go into before. Curiosity got the better of me, so I reviewed the footage more carefully. What I saw made my stomach turn. There she was, going into a private office with a guy I'd only heard about in whispers, Jeremy, the son of a major investor in my startup. They stayed inside for a good half hour, and I could see their shadows, the way they leaned into each other, and the way her hand was resting on his knee. The footage was crystal clear. I watched as they kissed, right there in that tiny office. My wife, my partner, my best friend cheating on me with a guy who's got family money and probably no morals. I felt like the ground was falling out from under me. It was all happening right under my nose, and I had no idea. I sat there staring at the screen for a long time, my mind racing. I knew I had to confront her. I just didn't know how to start. Should I shout, cry, pretend I didn't see anything? The betrayal hit hard because it wasn't just about her being unfaithful. It was the fact that this was all intertwined with my work, my dreams, my future. The guy she was cheating with. He's directly connected to my funding, my progress, everything I've been working toward. I remember feeling a mixture of anger and confusion. Why would she do this? Was it just sex? Was there more? Did she think I was so distracted and consumed that she could get away with it? And what about the fact that this was happening during funding negotiations? I'd been trying to secure this investment for months, thinking I was building something meaningful. Turns out, she was busy screwing around with someone who's kind of a symbol of everything I despise: wealth without integrity. It's like everything I worked for was just collateral damage in her little game. When I finally confronted her, I was already boiling over. I didn't want her to lie her way out of it. I was done with her bullshit. I told her I'd seen everything, and her excuse, that she was just talking, that Jeremy was just a friend, and that I was reading too much into it. That same bitchy smirk she always has, trying to belittle me like I was just paranoid. But I was. I saw what I saw. I knew the truth, and it was brutal. She kept lying, throwing in cliches about how I don't understand her, how she's stressed, how she's never cheated before. But I wasn't born yesterday. I saw through every word, every fake tear, every excuse she threw at me. That moment, that confrontation changed everything. It was the beginning of the end, or so I thought. The emotional fallout hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, angry, more than I've ever been in my life. I thought I knew my wife, my partner. Turns out she was a stranger hiding behind a mask of bitchy charm. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd just uncovered. And that's when I started thinking about what to do next. The days that followed were a blur of anger, disbelief, and a strange sense of numbness. I couldn't get the footage out of my head, her lips on his, her hand on his knee, the way she looked so comfortable and at ease with him. It was like some sick scene from a movie I couldn't turn off. I kept replaying it, trying to understand how I missed all the signs. Was I just blind? Did I ignore the little things because I didn't want to face the reality? I started examining every moment, every conversation, every glance she gave me. Honestly, it was like she had been planning this for a while. The way she suddenly became more distant, the snippy tone she always had, like she was annoyed I was even asking questions. It all clicked into place now. She'd been cheating on me probably for a while. And the worst part, she lied about everything from the start. Every smile, every "I love you," every promise we made. It was all fake. She was in bed with Jeremy and I was just blind to it. The next step seemed obvious, but it was also the hardest. I needed to confront her again, this time not with anger but with a plan. I knew I couldn't just storm out and yell. That wouldn't do anything but make her dig her heels in, deny, and pretend I was the crazy one. So I started gathering evidence. I kept all the footage I'd seen, saved messages, and even hired a private investigator to dig into her phone. I wanted to be prepared for whatever she threw at me, a typical manipulative wife, I figured, who'd try to spin her way out of it. When I finally confronted her that second time, I kept my voice calm but firm. I told her I knew everything, showed her the footage, and asked why. Her reaction? She played the victim card, of course. Said I was paranoid, that I didn't understand her stress, and that Jeremy was just a distraction. She threw in that classic line about how she's not that kind of woman, as if that somehow made it okay. I looked at her and said, "You're not that kind of woman. Then why were you sneaking around? Why were you kissing him in that office?" She tried to deny it, even as I played the footage on my phone. Her face went pale, but she still refused to admit guilt outright. I felt a mixture of fury and sadness. Fury because she'd betrayed me, lied to my face, and torn apart everything we had built. Sadness because I actually loved her once, or at least I thought I did. I'd trusted her with my entire life, my dreams, my future. And she threw it all away for some cheap thrill with Jeremy. I realized then that I wasn't just angry, I was devastated. That kind of betrayal cuts deep, especially when you've given someone your everything and they just toss it aside like it's nothing. Honestly, I didn't know what to do next. I felt like I was walking around in a fog. Part of me wanted to confront her again, yell, scream, break stuff. The other part just wanted to disappear, start over somewhere far away from all this pain. I thought about divorce, about telling her to pack her shit and leave. But I also wondered if there was a way to fix this, to somehow salvage what was left. I kept telling myself that maybe she was just confused, maybe she was under some kind of spell, and that if I fought hard enough I could bring her back. But deep down, I knew that was probably wishful thinking. She'd crossed lines I never thought she would, and I don't think I'd ever be able to trust her again. The emotional roller coaster was relentless. I'd go from furious to heartbroken in seconds. One moment I was convinced I'd leave her, cut her out of my life, and move on. The next, I'd be sitting alone in our apartment, crying, feeling like I'd lost the person I once loved. I'd look at her lying there, still maintaining that bitchy smirk, and wonder how someone so manipulative could be capable of love. Or maybe she never loved me. Maybe I was just convenient, a fool who thought he had it all. Through it all, I started to realize just how much this betrayal was about more than just her cheating. It was about my trust being shattered, my entire sense of security in this relationship. I kept asking myself, how did I get here? How did I not see this coming? It's a painful lesson, but I guess sometimes you only see the truth when it's staring right in your face. And that truth, it's brutal, it's ugly, and it's the kind of thing that leaves scars you carry for a long, long time. After the initial confrontation, I knew I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to admit the truth outright. I had to figure out my next move, and that meant gathering more evidence, thinking about what I really wanted, and preparing for whatever storm was coming. I started digging deeper into her phone and her online activities. I hired that pie because I wanted to be absolutely certain. No more doubts, no more "I saw something but I'm not sure." I needed to see everything. What I found was worse than I expected. Texts, messages, photos, all from Jeremy. They'd been sneaking around for months, probably hiding it from everyone, including her friends and me. Her texts were full of flirtation, inside jokes, plans to meet up. She even sent him pictures of herself, half naked, trying to look sexy. That was the moment I realized this wasn't some mistake or a one-time thing. It was a full-blown affair. It's sickening to think she'd betray me like that, especially when I was busting my ass trying to make my startup work, all while she was busy getting laid behind my back. I was furious, but I also felt numb. I was angry at her, yes, but also at myself. How could I have missed all of this? How blind was I? I'd always been proud of how honest I was, how committed I was to her, and now I felt like a fool. She was telling everyone I was paranoid, that I was overreacting, yet she was doing all of this behind my back with his family's money, no less. Jeremy's family is loaded. He's the golden boy, the kind of guy who can do whatever he wants. And my wife, well, she couldn't resist the allure of wealth, of power, of screwing her way into her own little empire. When I confronted her again, I was calmer but more deadly. I showed her the messages, played her the voicemails I'd recorded, and explained that I knew she'd been lying for months. Her reaction? Oh, she threw a fit. Started crying, saying I was ruining everything, that I was just jealous, that I was accusing her of stupid stuff. She really had the nerve to look me in the eye and deny everything, even after I had undeniable proof. That bitchy smirk, that attitude. She thought she could just lie her way out of this like she always did. What hurt the worst was how she spun it. She claimed Jeremy was just a friend, that I was overreacting because I was stressed out about the startup, about the funding. She said she never intended to hurt me, that it was all a mistake, a moment of weakness. She looked at me, her eyes cold and defiant, and said she loved me, but that she needed something more from her life. That's when I knew she'd already checked out. She didn't care about our vows, our marriage, or the life we'd built. She was just looking for her next thrill, and I was just collateral damage. Honestly, I felt like I was in some bad dream I couldn't wake up from. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, that I almost didn't recognize her anymore. The woman I married, the one I thought I knew, was just a lie. All the time she said she loved me, was that just words to keep me from questioning her? Was everything fake? I kept asking myself these questions, but no matter how much I wanted to believe things could go back to normal, I knew at that moment that it was over. Whether I wanted to admit it or not, I was done trying to save what was already broken beyond repair. But here's the thing. What really shook me was how she kept lying, how she kept spinning her stories. She's a master at manipulation. Every time I thought I had her cornered, she'd come back with another excuse, another lie. She'd call me paranoid, accuse me of stalking her, say I was insecure. She'd even try to turn the tables, making me feel guilty for catching her. That bitchy attitude, that condescending tone, she's good at making herself look innocent while I'm the villain in her twisted little story. At that point, I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not even for a second. The betrayal had cut so deep that I saw everything in a different light. I started questioning everything, my judgment, my love, my life. The person I loved was gone, replaced by someone who only cared about herself and Jeremy's family's money. The pain was unbearable, and I felt like I was spiraling into some dark place I didn't want to be. I kept telling myself I needed to think, to breathe, but inside I was just drowning in that crushing realization. I'd lost her, and I might never get her back. In the days that followed, I stayed awake most nights, replaying everything in my head. The images of her sneaking around, the texts I found, her lies, all of it haunted me. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that smirk and Jeremy's gloating smile. I started questioning everything about our relationship, about her loyalty, about whether I'd been blind for years. The betrayal was so profound that I wondered if I even knew who she was anymore. I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't live like this, constantly questioning, doubting, expecting the next revelation. The logical thing seemed to be to leave, to cut her out of my life and rebuild. But part of me hesitated. I still loved her, or at least I wanted to believe I did. That conflicted feeling was worse than the pain itself. How could someone I trusted so deeply turn into this manipulative, lying person? Was it all just a facade? Had I been blind to her true nature all along? I started considering my options. First, I thought about confronting her one more time, to get her to admit everything, to break her down with the truth I'd uncovered. But I knew that wouldn't be enough. She'd deny, lie, spin her web even tighter. I had enough evidence now to crush her, but I worried about what that would do to us, to me. I wondered if I could even stay in the same room with her, knowing what she'd done. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd ever thought possible. One thing I was certain of, I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. So I started planning my next move. I reached out to a lawyer, began gathering financial documents, and I even talked to a counselor, more for myself than anything else. I needed to understand how to protect myself, what my rights were, and how to handle this emotionally. I also knew I had to decide whether to confront her again or just cut my losses and walk away. The idea of divorce suddenly seemed more appealing than ever. I didn't want to stay with someone who had lied and cheated and lied some more. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act. She was still bitchy, still manipulative. Every time she'd see me, she'd shoot me that nasty look like I was the one at fault. She tried to gaslight me, saying I was crazy, that I was overreacting, that she never did anything wrong. But I had the footage, I had the messages, I had witnesses. I was done playing her game. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, and that realization made everything so much clearer. She'd been using me, using us for her own selfish needs. I was just a pawn in her little game, and I'd been blind to it for far too long. The emotional toll was brutal. Every day felt like a battle between my head and my heart. Logic told me to leave, to protect myself and my future. But part of me still wanted to believe it could be fixed. That maybe, just maybe, she'd come clean and apologize, really apologize, and we could somehow work through this mess. That hope clung to me like a lifeline, even as I knew deep down that it was probably wishful thinking. That's when I realized I had to accept the truth. This was over. The woman I thought I loved was nothing like the person I'd been with all these years. She was a liar, a manipulator, someone who would betray her vows at the first opportunity for Jeremy's family's money and her own selfish pleasure. It was a hard pill to swallow, but I knew I couldn't keep living in denial. I had to face the reality. She was gone, and I needed to figure out how to pick up the pieces and move forward, even if that meant starting over completely, alone. The decision to finally move on wasn't made overnight, but once I accepted that she wasn't coming back, everything else started to fall into place, though not easily. I spent a lot of sleepless nights debating whether I should even try to salvage the marriage or just cut my losses. But deep down, I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, and the pain of that betrayal was too raw to ignore. So I started planning my departure, making arrangements to get out of our shared apartment, securing my finances, and talking to a lawyer. It was a slow process, mostly because I kept second-guessing myself. Part of me wanted to believe she'd come to her senses, that maybe she'd realize what she'd thrown away. But every time I looked at her, still bitchy, still manipulative, I knew better. She'd already proven she'd lie to my face and deceive me for months. Trust was gone, and I couldn't pretend otherwise. I started telling friends and family bits and pieces of what I'd uncovered, trying to get some clarity from people I trusted. The support was reassuring, but it also made me realize how much of my life I'd been blindsided by her lies. The day I finally sat her down to tell her I was leaving was one of the hardest moments of my life. I remember standing there, feeling a strange mixture of anger, relief, and heartbreak. I told her I knew everything, about Jeremy, about the affair, about her lies. I told her I was done, that I couldn't stay with someone who had betrayed me like this. Her reaction, classic Lisa, she started crying, blubbering about how she loved me and she was sorry, how she didn't mean for any of it to happen. She begged, she pleaded, even tried to guilt-trip me with accusations that I was just overreacting, that I was ruining everything. But I saw through her act. That bitchy smirk was gone, replaced by genuine panic, but I didn't care anymore. I'd already made my choice. When she realized I was serious, she threw another tantrum, accusing me of throwing away our life together, of being too paranoid, of not understanding her. I just looked at her and said, "You lied to me for months. You betrayed everything we built, and I can't forgive that. I'm leaving and I want a divorce." The look in her eyes was priceless, stunned, furious, and finally defeated. She knew she'd lost control, and I think that realization scared her more than anything. The next few days were a whirlwind. I moved out, packed my things, and started over. It was like waking up from a nightmare I'd been living in for years. I felt a strange sense of liberation mixed with heartbreak. I still loved her, but I knew I couldn't trust her or lie. With her deceit, the truth had set me free, but it also crushed me in ways I wasn't prepared for. I kept asking myself how I let this happen, how I was so blind for so long. Of course, she kept trying to manipulate me even after I left. She'd send me angry texts, accusing me of abandoning her, calling me paranoid or obsessive. She'd try to make me feel guilty, but I didn't fall for it anymore. I finally saw her for what she was, someone who would lie, cheat, and betray anyone if it suited her. I learned that sometimes the person you love most can turn out to be the biggest enemy. And I learned that no matter how much you want things to be different, sometimes the truth is just too ugly to ignore. Honestly, the whole ordeal changed me. I became more cautious about trusting people, more aware of how manipulation works, and more determined to protect myself in the future. I know I'll probably carry this hurt for a long time, but I also know I'm better off without her. I've realized that betrayal cuts so deep because it's not just about the sex or the lies, it's about the trust, the promises, and the future I thought we had. Now I'm trying to rebuild my life piece by piece, knowing that I'll never forget what I learned from this. And if I could give any advice to someone in a similar boat, it's this. Trust your instincts, don't ignore the signs, and don't be afraid to walk away from someone who doesn't deserve you. Because in the end, your own peace of mind matters more than anything. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me. I used to think love and trust were the foundations of everything, that if you found the right person, nothing could shake you. Turns out I was naive. Betrayal like this shatters everything you thought was solid and leaves you questioning not just your relationship, but yourself. I've learned that sometimes people will lie and cheat behind your back, no matter how much you give them or how much you believe in them. It's a hard lesson, but one I probably needed to learn, because now I see things differently. I see red flags sooner, I trust my instincts more, and I refuse to waste my energy on someone who doesn't respect me enough to be honest. I also see how fragile everything is, the trust, the vows, the future. It's all too easy for it to be torn apart if someone chooses to betray you, and that betrayal cuts so deep, it leaves scars that take years to heal. Now I focus on rebuilding my life. I throw myself into work, into friendships I neglected, and into my own healing. I don't have all the answers, and I won't pretend to. But I do know one thing for sure. I am better off without her. The person I thought I knew was just a mask she wore, and I refuse to be fooled again. If there's one thing I want others to take away from this, it's this. Trust is fragile and betrayal is a brutal blow. But you're stronger than you think. You can survive the worst, learn from it, and come out the other side more resilient. Don't ignore the signs when they're there. Don't let someone's smile or sweet words fool you into ignoring the truth. And if someone betrays you, don't be afraid to walk away, because your happiness and your peace of mind are worth more than any lie. I hope my story serves as a warning, but also as a testament. You can come out of the darkness stronger. You just have to be willing to face the truth, no matter how ugly it is. After all, sometimes the biggest lesson is understanding that the most valuable thing you have, trust, is worth fighting for, but only with people who truly deserve it.